Today on Cryptic Mass Guitar, we do a high gain off between the EVH 5150iii 100S, so the 100-watt stealth, and the Paul Reed Smith MT100, the Mark Tremonti 100-watt head. So what is a high gain off? I'll flash it on the screen here, but it's basic. It's 4 different sections. Section 1, both amps going through 4 different cabinets with 4 different speaker types. Section 2 is what I used to call a high gain shootout. So we have 3 different sound samples. They're more long form. The first 2 have leads. First one is boosted. Nothing else is boosted there afterwards. And then for the third sound sample, I'm using the matching speaker type. Section 3 is simply both amps blended together, so the 5150iii hardpan left and the MT100 hardpan right. And then finally for Section 4, we have similar settings, so I play the same settings with 3 different setting types and the same riff. So let's start off with Section 1, and that is both heads being played through 4 different cabinets with 4 different speaker types. On to Section 2, which is a high gain shootout. So we have 3 different long form sound samples here. First of which is boosted with an Ibanez TS9 and a KH95 on the lead. Second, no boost on the rhythm or the lead. And then the third, there's no leads, but I am using, for the 5150iii, I am using the G12 EVHs. Which are the Heritage Greenbacks in an EVH 5150iii cabinet, which is what this amp was designed for. And then for the MT100, I'm playing with an ENGL E412 XXL, so that's a straight cabinet that inside is actually a angled cabinet, and that has vintage 30s. So everything that I've read for the MT100 is stating that it was designed for a vintage 30. So there you go. Section 3, we do what I was always asked whenever I did a high gain amp shootout, and that was, wow, I wonder what both of these amps would sound like together. So hard pan left, 5153 Stealth, and hard pan right, the MT100. Finally, section 4, let's play the exact same settings on both amps. That way you can actually hear the differences here. There's not major differences between both of these amps. It's just the way that the gains react and the mids, high mids, and the lows that are really what's different on both of these amps. All right, so that's it for all of the different sound systems. There's no more playing from now on. I'm just going to talk. So it's at this point in the video I'd like to talk about my thoughts on both of these amps. And I do want to start out by saying people have been lying to me for years on the 100-watt Stealth. When I bought my 5150iii, the 50-watt EVH, I brought that home. I thought, this is great. I really wish that I had gotten the 100-watt, but they had not stocked the 100-watt. Then I found out that there was no resonance control on the 100-watt, and to me, that's pretty important on a 5150iii. So I found out that the 100-watt Stealth has resonance controls for each. But every time I would go in and like, it wasn't all the time, like I wouldn't go in a lot. But whenever I would inquire about the 100-watt Stealth, I would do so at Long & McQuaid, and whenever they would look it up, they would say, well, the 100-watt Stealth was a limited edition, so we can't order it in anymore. That's just lack of information on their end. So if you want the 100-watt Stealth rather than the 50-watt Stealth, just order it. It'll come in. And then the MT100 here is the other guy on this channel, Kevin. When they announced the MT15, because he's a huge Tremonti fan, and I know him from Creed. That's about it. Great player, but I've never really invested my time into listening to him, which is something that I'm missing out on, clearly. But when they announced the MT15, he said, I'm holding out for the MT100, and then he got on a trade the MT15, and then like a couple of weeks later, he sent it out to me, and I'm going to send it back to you, Kevin. Don't worry about it. So, like I said, sort of towards the end, both of these amps can be taken as if they're voiced similarly. So in the Shootout, there's not like this huge variance in sound. A lot of it is just how the gain reacts and how the like low mids and high mids react. The MT100, one thing I've always noticed, or always for the like month or two that I've owned it, the moment that you bring your gain past noon, it sort of, the low end starts to me, come across like it's a fuzz pedal. It's probably not the best way of explaining it, and I'm not someone who usually brings my gain past noon, and usually even then it's like 1 o'clock at max. But that's just something that I've noticed. I've also noticed that the presence control, even if you're raising your master volume, and when you're looking at it, like my master volume on the MT100 usually sits about 1230 or 1, but you still have to bring up the presence control quite a bit. It's not like the Archon where you need that bright switch on, or otherwise your presence control really has to be up quite a bit. But there's a lot more benefit to increasing the presence control on the MT100. And when you're bringing that volume up, it's not as reactionary as most other amps where the EQ, like if you're playing at bedroom levels, which is nothing wrong with that, but when you're playing at bedroom levels, your EQ is usually skewed to be a lot higher than it normally would be. The moment you start bringing up your volume, then your EQ, you start dialing it back. So if you're someone who plays at bedroom volumes and you're looking at other people's settings, the reason why they're closer to like noon or their bass control dialed back a little more, it's because they're playing at higher volumes. So this amp here, you still end up with your presence and your treble a little more skewed, but I still keep my treble. It's very rare where it's like past 130 or something like that. And on the EVH, I tend to use channel 3 as my rhythm channel. I know a lot of people enjoy using channel 2 because it's a little more reserved on the gain end, and they like to use channel 3 as a lead channel, but I just find that channel 3 has a little more bite to it, and having that gain dialed back, I usually keep mine between like 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock on channel 3. It just, I don't know, it hits the spot really, really well. The other thing with the gain control here it doesn't do that thing where you start raising the gain and your low end sounds like it's got a fuzz pedal to it. Again, that's me being crazy. It seems like it's just too much gain when you start bringing it past, like 1 o'clock or something like that. Both amps as well, they work real. The low end doesn't really overtake things on these amps. So I mean, when I say that, for the most part, when I'm playing with a high gain amp, my low control, unless I'm boosting, my low control is usually sitting at about like 9 o'clock. It could be anywhere from 9 o'clock to like 9:30. The 5153 and the MT100, I tend to actually play with it around 10 o'clock, 10:30. And it doesn't really get into the way of the sound. Like it doesn't overtake things. It sort of, it can really help the mid-range, so that it can really help that low mid and get a little more grit and gristle in the sound. And the presence control on the 5153, I don't know. For me, I like having it right at noon. For most amps, I like having the presence and the resonance control set at noon. Here, it doesn't really need to have like enhanced presence. And my master volume, my volume here for the 5153 is sitting at like 11:30. So that presence control is generally sitting right at noon. It works really well. You can start increasing it a little more if you want a little more definition in the high end. My resonance control, I was keeping it at noon. But just with talking with different people, and where they say the OG 5153 had the internal resonance set to 6 o'clock, I kind of put it there, and it just really works well. So this is one of those amps where I will increase the resonance to 6 o'clock. The 5153, also in comparison to the MT100, is a little more dark. So when you're starting to increase that mid-range, it doesn't become like overly bright, whereas it can with the MT100. But it has this really nice overall dark tone, which is sort of something that with the 5150s, 5152s, the 6505s, and 6505 Plus, and the 2s, they're sort of, they sort of keep that same tradition as being somewhat of a have an overall darker tone, which really, really works well for high gain and like metal and stuff like that. Of course, now that I've said it's an overall darker tone, someone's going to say, you're nuts, there's no way, it's definitely not an overall darker tone, in which case, okay. And if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, it's criminal that you're not mentioning channel 2, the overdrive channel here, and I haven't played through them. For these, I like to play at either the highest gain channel, or play at the channel that I find suits the amp best for me for high gain. So I'll try and stick away from using like the second channel or an alternate channel. However, the MT100 here, the overdrive channel, I've said it before and I'll say it a million times because just to me, it's the best way to describe it. If you dime the overdrive, the gain on the overdrive channel, and you throw a boost in a boost setting out in front, that gives you the sound of what people think a JCM 800 sounds like. It's not what a JCM 800 sounds like, but most people haven't actually played through a JCM 800, and that's usually the sound that they're, looking for when it comes to a JCM 800. Channel 2 is voiced a little different gain-wise than channel 3 on the 5153. It works really well for like staccato riffs or what have you. I just find that, again, like I stated before, channel 3, whereas a lot of people do use channel 3 for like a lead channel, for playing like solos and stuff like that, I just find that the gain and that channel has just a little bit more bite to it, a little more saturation, which is generally something I am looking for in a high gain tone. So channel 2 on both of these amps are fantastic, but if you're looking for more variance in your availability to play, or available tones for you to play, I do have to say the MT100 with that overdrive channel dimed the gain and boosted. It just sounds fantastic. But that's it for this edition of High Gain Off. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully, it's inspired you to go, that guy sucks. I'm going to make my own video, because it's really, the more of these type of videos we have out there, just the better. Thanks for watching.